It's 2020, and there is a revolution underway.
Hi, I'm Kathy Smith, and welcome to On Health, the Art of Living. What is the average American eating? Why is gut health so important? What is this new research?
Americans get 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables a day.
Shocking. I was sucked in after the first chapter.
The more that you focus on the path, the more likely the goal will come to you.
The podcast is available wherever you listen, so just search The Art of Living with Kathy Smith. Hi, I'm Kathy Smith. Welcome to On Health, the Art of Living, where each week I bring you the latest information on how to live a healthier, more vibrant, more passion-driven life. Now, as a little reminder, if you're getting bored with your workout routine and you want to mix it up a little bit, try joining Fit Over 40. It's a free program that includes 14 days of workouts, from walking to HIIT, from bar to ab routines, and so much more. You see, staying active just got a little easier. All you have to do is sign up at kathysmith.com. Okay, so I'm really excited about today's show, and here's why. One of the most frustrating facts of human biology is that we're much better at creating fat than we are at burning it off. So today's guest offers the tools to help you flip that switch and become what he calls a fat-burning beast in his new book, 2 Meals a Day, the simple, sustainable strategy to lose fat, reverse aging, and break free from diet frustration forever. He's a New York Times best-selling author, an elite endurance athlete, the founder of Primal Kitchen and the Primal Blueprint. Plus, he publishes a wonderful, and it's crazily read and so successful. It's called Mark's Daily Apple, and it's a blog that I go to all the time because it's that great. So with that in mind, let me welcome him to the show. How's everything going? How's everything in Florida right now? How are you doing?
Oh, it's amazing. Really, really good. It's like, it's like there's no COVID for starters. It's, everybody's on the beach, and the restaurants are open and thriving, and you have to put a mask on every once in a while to get from point A to point B. But it's really quite refreshing, especially having come from Los Angeles, Pacific Palisades, like 2 weeks ago, where it's still a massive shit show.
Yeah, it's massive lockdown and everything. Of course, I know. I'm jealous of you down there. But I'm in Utah, and of course we have a big dump of snow this week. So that's been fun to get outside. And I'm outdoors so much, so we have a little bit more freedom here. But I love that you're on the show, and spending a little time with you. And I no matter what happens in your career, and your career has been awesome, but I always think back, and to me, you're always going to be the triathlete that ruled the west side of LA. And I just remember all the fun training and all with, Andrew and all of the Votresantes and all of that. So, but that was yesteryear, and now you have a new book out, which I'm excited about to share today. And, it's all about this approach to intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating. And I guess we can just dive in. I think the title sums it up, 2 meals a day. It's pretty obvious, a clue to your approach to achieving this optimal health. But can you get in, and can we start and expand on this definition of what you're calling intermittent eating instead of intermittent fasting? And tell us, like, when and why did you get into it yourself, and then why did you decide to write the book?
Yeah, I've been writing about diet and exercise and fitness and health and a little bit of medicine for 30 years. And through those years, I've had a number of great learnings. And some of them were, pretty granular. Fats were not as evil as we one time thought they were. Sugars are probably quite evil. Industrial seed oils, which are a form of fat, are maybe more insidious than sugar, and so a lot of these learnings are, as I said, they're kind of granular. And I almost had after going through the ancestral eating strategy, and then it became paleo, and then I created my own brand, Primal Blueprint. And then the next level up from that was keto. And, it was always sort of looking at the macronutrient profile and figuring out how we could manipulate our hormones to achieve ideal body composition, ideal energy, muscle mass, achieve sort of a level of robust immunity, and all of these things, came together in a revelation I had a couple of years ago, that this is all about metabolic flexibility. It's literally, no matter what your choice of how you eat, whether you're vegan or vegetarian or fruitarian or pescatarian or keto or carnivore, the ultimate goal in any of these approaches is to achieve metabolic flexibility. And by that, I mean the ability to extract energy from whatever substrate of energy is available on your body at the time. So, in the last several decades, so many of us, most Americans, have gotten to this point where we're just dependent on the next meal. We're dependent on carbohydrates at every meal. We assume that carbohydrates and glucose in particular is the preferred fuel of the human body. And so we kind of orchestrate our day around 3 meals and sometimes a snack in between. And we're actually coached early on, especially in the fitness world, that multiple small meals a day is the way to eat, and never go more than 2 or 3 hours without having some amount of protein or some amount of carbohydrate to keep your energy levels up, so that you can not only have your energy, but that you won't cannibalize your muscle tissue. And with that particular old tech eating strategy, that former conventional wisdom, it was probably true that you needed to do that to keep your energy up, because you never trained your body to burn fat. You sort of were always in the space of refueling carbohydrate, and then your body getting used to burning glycogen or in the muscles, or glucose in the bloodstream, and the brain was used to burning glucose. So the idea of metabolic flexibility ceased to exist. We are born with this factory setting that prefers burning fat, that loves to burn ketones when they're present, that can burn carbohydrate or glucose when available and when called upon. So we have this factory setting at birth, which allows us to be metabolically flexible. Unfortunately, we've lost it over time. It's more of a cultural thing than it's a genetic thing. We're all wired to be metabolically flexible. So what I looked at was how is it that we can become metabolically flexible? How can we learn to access our stored body fat and derive most of our energy on a daily basis from that stored body fat? How is it that we can get to the point where we don't feel like crap when we shift from a keto diet to maybe some more carbs? Because that happens to a lot of people who aren't metabolically flexible. They may be in keto, they may be in ketosis, they may be eating a keto lifestyle choice, but they're not metabolically flexible yet. So there's this space that we get into where if we can train the body through diet to become more metabolically flexible by withholding carbohydrate at specific times of day, and if we can train the body through specific types of exercise, and certainly through getting the right amount of sleep and the right amount of sun exposure, we can access this sort of holy grail of health, this metabolic flexibility, this metabolic efficiency that allows us then to be untethered from mealtime, to be untethered from hunger, appetite, cravings, and all the things that so many of us, wind up kind of bowing to on a daily basis. So the idea behind the book, 2 meals a day, was ultimately a revelation as well, that we eat too damn much food, right? That so many of us assume we have to eat 3 meals a day. So many of us assume that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, when in fact, that's not only not accurate, it might be harmful for some people to be consuming 3 meals a day. So the 2 meals a day kind of looked at the synthesis of the macronutrient profiles that people have been bandying about over the past decade, and then this new interest in intermittent fasting, which is, I don't even like the word fasting because it sort of has a negative connotation to it. But if you sort of lead with, look, 2 big meals a day, you can have 2 meals a day, and you'll achieve, metabolic flexibility. You'll burn off your stored body fat. You'll have all the energy you need. You'll build muscle mass if you need some. You'll maintain muscle mass if you have some. You won't get sick often, if ever. You'll sleep better. You'll perform better. There's nothing that's negative about this whole approach. It's all positive.
Okay, so let me jump in and let's. I'm going to throw a couple scenarios out and let's maybe unpack this a little bit, because we've talked on this show a lot about intermittent fasting, and my listeners love it, and they're going to love you, and they're going to love your book, I have to say. But I mean, I've had Sarah Gottfried, Hormone Cure, Felice Gersh, who's big on intermittent fasting. We've had Walter Longo, and talked a lot about it. But what I want to, and I love where you're going with this, and obviously you know what you're talking about, but I want to back up for a second, because you talk about it in your book. How do you prep for something like this? Because as much as you say, oh, 2 meals a day, and in your book I read you eat one at 1 in the afternoon and 7, and sometimes you only eat a meal and a half. And this is not about you. What I want to get to is females, first of all, because that's mainly my listeners. I want to get to females, and I want to get to how do we step into this process? Because it's taken me about 1.5 years, and I raised my hand to being one of those people in yesteryear. We've all grown through the years, but it was. I mean, you think 4 meals a day? There was a point where we were saying we should have 6 meals a day, and it's constantly. It was like the birds scenario, snacking all day long. And I started to pull back and pull back and pull back. And now I'm at my 2 meals a day, which I find I find great. But having said that, it wasn't like snap your fingers and tomorrow you're going to be, feeling good doing it this way. And also, I want to talk about, so I'm throwing a lot of ideas out. You can pick, as we unpack this, you can pick whichever ones you want to talk about. What I found, Mark, is that being a female, myself, different from a male, you, and being the fact, and getting to the point where I don't have a lot of excess fat on my body, and depending on what kind of training, and I want to get into that a little later on, of how hard you train and how you adjust things like that. But in general, I found that it took a while for me to get to the point where, for me, I have my first meal at about 11:30-ish. And then I like to eat my last meal about 6-ish. But that is like, that's not very much fun for the guy I'm going out with, right? I mean, going to dinner at 6 o'clock at night. I mean, you live in Miami, so that's kind of accepted there. But in general, starting, your dinner at 6 p.m. So let's talk about just some of the issues of prepping to step into this lifestyle.
Well, I guess first of all, I'm going to ask you, how do you feel about eating 2 meals a day, generally?
Oh, I like it. And where I was making the biggest mistake, honestly, and that's what I love about your book, Felice Gersh pointed this out to me also, but I was thinking, and I think this is a misconception people have, oh, I have an 8-hour window. I can stop eating at 7 at night and eat whatever that is the next day and have my 8-hour window and then just eat continuously. And when I first learned about 6 months ago, it's like, Kathy, it's like that time between your meals also has to be where you're, and that was the biggest change for me. When I did that, which I didn't think I was going to be able to do. When I started having that fasting session between, it opened up my entire life. And you talk about this in the book. It's a running joke in my family. As a matter of fact, I was telling my girls last night that you're going to be on the show. And I said, do you remember when we were driving from West LA out to Tarzana and we're going to go to a soccer game? And I had to make sure that in the car, we had, for that 1.5-hour drive, we had nuts and seeds and this and that, because God forbid we get hungry. So that thing where you're not tethered to that next meal, it's freedom. It's pure freedom.
Oh, it is pure freedom. It's empowerment like no one. I mean, if you think about the things that drive, your thinking process and your life, food is way up there at the top. But I still want to get back to asking you, so I'm assuming that you're now comfortable with 2 meals a day. And so one question I would ask you, knowing what you know and seeing how this works in your lifestyle, do you anticipate ever going back to 3 or 4 meals a day?
No.
Okay, you're
no,
taking
no,
too
no,
long to
no,
answer
no.
that.
The
Like
answer,
that tells me that
No.
it's a maybe yes.
no,
So-
no. It's not. The only thing I want to say is that I am not a real rule-driven person. I've never been in my
Right.
exercise. I'm intuitive. So for 40
Yeah.
years now, my exercise has been run that way. I mean, I like knowing the rules, and then I like being able to adjust depending on. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm traveling, if I'm, if I'm get invited out
Okay,
to.
so you bring up an excellent point. The fact that you can do well and thrive on 2 meals a day. My point is you're not like hanging in there with 2 meals a day until such time as some body morphic metric happens. You're comfortable doing it now, but you're also comfortable with the notion of what I call fractal eating. Now, fractal eating is pretty much a way that I live as well. If I'm on the road, if I'm traveling, sometimes I go to a new city. I love having breakfast, and then I don't eat, for the rest of the day. Or I might have, one small meal and 2 big meals, and then I might eat just 1 meal and then not eat again for the rest of the day. All of these things are only possible with ease and grace and comfort if you're metabolically flexible. So you have to sort of build the machinery first in order to be so flexible that it doesn't matter, that none of this even matters. And all that matters is that you feel good. You talk about intuitive. My whole life has been about teaching people how to become that intuitive eater, that intuitive exerciser, that one who's not beholden to writing down every set, every rep, every rest period, every macronutrient, tracking everything. Almost on the contrary, my life is about what's the least amount of exercise I can do and still maintain, strength and fitness, and be able to play games, because that's really why I like to move. I like to find ways to have fun with my fitness activities, and I know you do too. And let's go back to sort of one of the original epiphanies. When I said we eat too much food, I started thinking to myself, how often people will describe a meal that they had, or the serving size. And remember, in the old Cheesecake Factory days, you get such a big portion that you couldn't actually finish it even if you tried, and you would talk about feeding a small village. But we humans we see what we can get away with. And one of the things we try to get away with is, how much food can I eat and not gain weight? How much food can I eat and not feel guilty or feel uncomfortable at the end of this meal? How much food can I eat and feel like I've finished my plate? How much of this dessert can I have and not feel guilty? And so we sort of tend to live our lives, many of us, not all of us, but many of us live our lives with this kind of taking it to the edge. Like, what's the most amount of this I can do and not incur damage, either guilt or psychological or actually putting on the pounds? And I thought to myself, well, that's part of our wiring, is we are wired to overeat. We have this amazing body that is designed to take excess calories that we ingest and literally store it as energy that we carry around in a very convenient location on our bodies, conveniently placed above the center of gravity, on the ass, on the thighs, on the hips, on the belly. And it's a perfect design for a survival machine. So we tend to, we're wired to overeat, and then because of access to food, we tend to generally overeat up to the point of discomfort in many cases. So I thought to myself, what if we took a different approach? And what if we said, what's the least amount of food I can eat, and maintain or build muscle, have all the energy I need, never get sick, and most importantly, not be hungry? Because, if you get hungry, that sort of ruins the whole thing. What's the least amount of food I can do and accomplish all those goals? And as you develop metabolic flexibility, and as you start to spread the time out between these meals, and you become comfortable with that, and you become comfortable with the notion that your body is very good, when you train it, it's very good at taking fat out of your fat cells, out of stores, and using it for energy and combusting it without you having to do anything, without you noticing it. You can skip meals and never be at the effect of being hangry. So when I looked at what's the least amount of food we can eat and maintain muscle mass or build muscle mass, have all the energy we want, not get sick, and most importantly, not be hungry, it turns out it's a lot less food than most people assume they need to get through a day. and again, the hunger thing, that's my main thing, is I want people to never be hungry. Like you can be a little bit like, ready for the next meal because you can't wait, for the savory, delight that's about to appear. But this idea of hunger and appetite and cravings tends to dissipate when you become metabolically flexible.
Can
I will also
can
say
I interrupt for 1 second?
Oh, yeah, please, sorry.
So no, that's
Sorry
okay.
if I'm rambling,
No,
Kathy. I'm so passionate about this.
I want to make sure, because I love, you can ramble as much as, for me, ramble as much as you want, but I want to make sure that we're not skipping over certain terms that are really important. And I think this, I love this term metabolic flexibility. You can use carbs or you can use fat as your source of fuel. But let's talk about this thing of becoming fat adapted, because that's a key to making this whole thing work. And I think that so many Americans, and if you get back to, one of the number one health issues in the country is this insulin resistance. And why don't you just dive in a little bit, like if you're a carb eater, and you tend to, and maybe you have something called metabolic syndrome, which you're just starting to be close to having prediabetes perhaps, then this tapping to fat is a little harder, or I don't even want to use that word. It's something you haven't trained yet. So how do we start to become, like you are, like I've become through the years, through my fitness and through my eating, more fat adapted? But I think the leap for most people is, how do we get there when we're still at metabolic syndrome type of stage?
Yeah, no, that's the essence of, that's the question. That's the big hurdle that we all have to kind of figure out the best path to get to that point. So insulin resistance is basically a long-term effect over the years of you, not you personally, but one, consuming lots of carbohydrates, because that's been sort of recommended by the government, 6 to 8, 11 servings of grains and whatever, fruits and vegetables. These are all carbs. And the body becoming so dependent on carbohydrate for its energy sources that it never really taps into the fat stores. Now, the body likes to store fat. It loves to store fat because it's designed to do that. And it likes to take excess calories and store them as fat. When you eat a lot of carbohydrate, carbohydrates turn to glucose. They turn into, we use the term glucose and sugar interchangeably, but glucose. And everybody's heard of blood sugar or blood glucose. Well, if glucose is the preferred fuel of the body, why is it that at any one time in a healthy person, there's about 1 teaspoonful of sugar in the entire bloodstream of a human? If glucose or glycogen are the number one preferred fuel, why is it the muscles can only store about realistically 350 grams of usable carbohydrate in the muscles and about 100 grams of glycogen in the liver? These are not large amounts. You could go through this in a day if that's all you had to rely on. So that's not a very good design of a system. And then adding insult to injury in that case, too much glucose in the bloodstream is dangerous. That's why diabetes is so dangerous. That's why diabetics have neuropathies and retinopathies and lose limbs because of lack of circulation. Too much sugar in the bloodstream can literally clog up the capillaries and cause all sorts of horrendous circulation issues. So the body is a great mechanism to get rid of excess glucose. So when you overeat glucose, the pancreas secretes insulin. And then insulin is this wonderful hormone that unlocks the muscle cells and allows the glucose to go into the muscle cells. It allows the glucose to go into other cells. By the way, it also allows amino acids. So it's not just a sugar storage hormone, it's a nutrient storage hormone. So what insulin does is it unlocks the access to the cells. Now, if the cells are already full of glycogen, and as I just explained, you can't store that much glycogen in the muscles, so it's easy for the muscles to be full of glycogen. Then insulin sort of shunts all of this stuff over to become fat, and we tend to store this excess energy as fat. And over time, the pancreas, if you have too much insulin also locks the glucose into the fat cells, or locks the fat into the fat cells. So too high insulin, and you can't get the fat out of the fat cells to use it for fuel. So now you have this bizarre situation where you're gaining weight, You've taken in a lot of calories, and yet because of the insulin, you've locked your fuel into the fat cells, and now your brain's going, hey, I got to eat again. I got to eat again because my blood sugar's too low. So now you eat more, and then of course you raise your blood sugar, and then the pancreas secretes more insulin, and it's this roller coaster effect, literally meal to meal, snack to meal, meal to snack all day long. And over time, what happens is the cells, which have little receptor sites that sort of listen to the transmission of insulin, the cells go, hey, we're full. Like, stop, la, 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 we can't hear you. And so the pancreas says, well, the only way to fix this is produce more insulin. And so the cells become more resistant to the signal. The pancreas produces even more and more insulin, trying to overcome that resistance. And you get this horrible situation where inflammation rises because insulin is inflammatory, as is too much sugar in the bloodstream. Now, so that's the problem that so many, like tens of millions of people face in this country and hundreds of millions around the world. So how you get around that is you have to train the body to be able to access the stored body fat, reduce the amount of insulin, and reverse that whole process. Well, the way you reverse insulin is typically to cut the carbohydrate load way back. Now, that doesn't mean that you cut back on vegetables, because vegetables are sort of locked, even though they're carbohydrates in vegetables, they're locked in a nice fibrous matrix. But you cut back on the sugared added stuff, the sweetened beverages, the pies, the cakes, the candies, the cookies, the breads, the pastas, the cereals. You cut back on all that stuff to where you're just eating basically whole food, and the body starts to understand it's not going to get a regular supply of glucose or carbohydrate every 2 or 3 hours throughout the day. The human may now decide to go not just through the night, but skip breakfast and see how long we can go without needing to eat something to keep our energy levels up. And that's the first sort of indication that you're becoming fat adapted, is the term you used. And I love that term, that you become fat adapted when you realize I can wake up in the morning and I can start my day without having to have a waffle or pancakes or cereal or toast or any of these other sort of things that have been ubiquitous in our diet.
So Mark, then adding to that, then fasting also helps us become fat adapted. That's another tool in our toolbox to help us get there.
It is the best tool.
It's the best tool. Okay, so if and again, whether you decide to do time restricted eating or occasionally do a longer fast, these tools are something like exercise. I mean, this is you train it, you can get better at it, you can do it a little more, you get a little better.
And you can overdo it, right?
Yes, and you can overdo it. Good point. You can overdo it. So that idea of overdoing it, let's skip over there, because this is getting into this female side of this. When I've had Felice and Dr. Sarah Gottfried on the show, we talked about, there's a bunch of studies out right now that talk about just the female. Do men and women, are we created equal? No.
I hope not.
When it comes to time restricted eating, and so what their whole approach is that for women, you can trigger, if you go the full 16 hours, you can, and you mentioned this in your book, but you can start to trigger cortisol and you have a stress response. It's like, oh my God, what's happening here? Feed me, I don't feel right. And then that cortisol that gets dumped in your system, getting back to your your insulin resistance. It's another trigger that basically says, okay, we got to shut everything down, and shut fat burning down, etc. But it also creates inflammation and obviously all those things we don't want. So, in general, their thought is that females should eat a little earlier in the day. That going until that 1 o'clock is not the way to do it. And we don't have to debate that on the show here, honestly. But I would just wanted to kind of get back to you. Do you see some differences in the way that women should approach this as opposed to men, or basically equal?
Absolutely differences. Yeah. So I will say out of the blocks that there are a lot of women who absolutely thrive on a keto-ish 2 meals a day, compressed eating window, whatever you want to call it. Absolutely thrive on it. And there are a number in my immediate purview in my life who are so thrilled they found this way of eating. There are women who maybe have a longer history of metabolic dysfunction. And I'm not going to go into all of the possibilities, but it could go back as far as anorexia, bulimia. It could have been disordered eating, which includes overeating and emotional eating. And if you layer this on after 20 or 30 years, you've created a metabolic system that's going to take not just a little bit longer to correct, to fix, but it's going to have to be nuanced in the way you do it. And even you, as you yourself said, it's taken you 1.5 years to get to where you are. I hope that you were not uncomfortable for 1.5 years. I hope, and I know that for a fact, because you're an intuitive eater and an intuitive person, that you figured out, the way in which to do it for yourself. To your point, some women find that this compressed eating window is better serving them with breakfast and a late lunch, and then maybe a smaller non-existent dinner. Some women just, after attempting to do it, can't get to maybe the 2 meals a day, but can get to two small meals and then one larger meal. But I think the essence of all of this is to understand that we really weren't built to eat 3 regular meals at regular meal times of predictable size and macronutrient breakdown every day of our lives. We evolved over 2.5 million years of human evolution and another 100 million years of mammalian evolution before that, and 1 billion years of multicellular. We've evolved to be exposed to this energy source, which we call food, in fractal amounts. Sometimes there'd be a surplus of it, and sometimes for days there would be none of it. And so our metabolic system, our biological systems, are designed to overeat at certain times, particularly when presented with great tasting sweet fruits and things like that, but also designed to be flexible enough that when there was no food for 2 days or 3 days or 5 days, that we wouldn't just curl up in a ball, in a fetal position on the floor and feel sorry for ourselves. We literally go about our lives looking for the next source of food, but not distracted by being hangry or being upset, because the metabolic flexibility had been so ingrained in us that the body expected to go long periods of time without eating. And one of the major research arms of this time-restricted eating, this compressed eating window, this intermittent fasting, whatever you want to call it, basically looks at all the time that we're not eating and what's happening in the body. And it turns out all the good stuff happens to our human body when we're not eating. Let your audience savor that for all the good stuff happens when you're not eating. That's when you're burning stored body fat. That's when your body is undergoing what we call autophagy, where certain senescent cells are being consumed, certain parts of old cells are being consumed, where DNA is being repaired, because it's a millennia-old DNA genetic response to the lack of nutrition, where the body says, all right, normally my job is to take in nutrition and to grow and to pass the genetic material along to the next generation. So that means that a body that has access to lots of nutrients, carbohydrates, protein, amino acids, free fatty acids, and things like that, cells within the body will take these in and go, wow, there's so much food. This is cool. I'm going to divide. I'm going to pass the genetic material along to the next generation. So a cell will divide. And that's great if you're growing, if you're a child and you're growing, but as you get older, you don't want your cells to divide that often. And so now imagine a cell that is faced with a longer period of time and there is no nutrition. What the cell thinks from a survival point of view is, there's not only not enough nutrients here for me to become 2 of me, there's not even enough for me. So I'm going to take this opportunity to consume some of the damaged fats and damaged proteins within my cell. I'm going to take this opportunity to repair some of the damaged strands of DNA that have been sort of subject to inflammation and access to bad raw materials, for instance. And so the cell sort of, not that the cells think, but the cell's programmed to do this housekeeping and this house cleaning, which we now predict has a longevity aspect to it. So when I say all the good stuff happens to us while we're not eating, I am really serious about that. Then the challenge becomes, okay, how long can I go without eating and be comfortable? Because to your point about, women and hormones, and particularly cortisol, but also thyroid hormone, that's a big issue for some women. We have to be, a little bit more careful about that, but that doesn't mean we can't trend toward metabolic flexibility over time. It's not like we hit an impasse and that's it. I tried it. It didn't work. I'm done. I'm stopping. We just maybe it takes, maybe it takes a year. Maybe it takes 2 years. With men, it takes 3 weeks. With some women, it takes 3 weeks. With some women, it takes 3 months or 6 months. And if you're one who's been, at the effect of metabolic dysfunction for most of your life, you have to understand that it's going to take a little while, but that all of these things, all of these methods are safe. And, and Sarah Godfrey, she's, I understand 100% where she's coming from, and she deals with a lot of women, with this sort of situation. So, she's able to work one-on-one with them and say, look, if you can't make it from dinner last night until 10:30 this morning, at least you made it to 10:30. So then, don't be miserable. Don't get foggy headed. That's the point at which maybe your first meal takes place. And if you eat at 10:30, maybe your last meal's at 5 o'clock, and see if you can go the rest of the night and through the night and do it that way. Now, the fact that it doesn't work with, the guy you're dating, Kathy, that's not my problem.
Get rid of the guy. Get rid of the guy. It's either get rid of the guy or no. So here's the thing. So my takeaways of what you just said right there is that, first of all, I love the visual. I love the fact that there's the chimney sweep guy, or the guy with the broom, and he's going through your entire body. That's what it feels like to me. Like, I feel like my entire body has got some great things going on inside when I'm fasting, that's just cleaning up all the mess. And I see it. I see it in my eyes. I see it in my skin. I see it all over, that I feel more alert, more brain power, etc. So that's a positive thing. And we don't have, I mean, we're on the same page. I just think that when you're saying how long it takes certain people, part of it is that what they're actually feeling physically. And part of it, I think, is just mental and social, the social aspects of, how you were raised, and you're going back for Thanksgiving dinner, and who's around you, and all those things that we know impact how you eat. But let me tell you, we're on the same page with a couple other things. And you have something called Sisson's Simple Suggestions. And one of the ones that I love in your book, in that chapter, is that, one of the things you talk about, certain things you like to munch on if you're going to have a quick snack or whatever, and it might replace a meal, but you like chocolate with almond butter or peanut butter on it. So that is like a man after my own heart, because that's what I do. And the other thing that we have in common is that you call it, Sisson's kick-ass salad or whatever, but I have a bowl, and I'm not exaggerating. It is like it's a mixing bowl for if you're going to make a lot of cookies. And I have something called Salad Master, and Salad Master is a brilliant tool that I got about 10 years ago. And basically, carrot. I mean, it's like whatever, celery, squash.
Chops them to the exact chewable specification, right?
Oh my God! And it grows and it grows and it grows. And then there's some avocado, and then there's some sauerkraut, and then of course I have some olive oil, and then throw some olives in, and then this and that, and I sit there and then I sit down, like I feel like I'm Alice in Wonderland because my bowl is 5 times what it should be, and that's my Kathy Smith bowl. Typically every day I'm having at least 5 days a week I'm having a big salad like that. So I know that you kind of do the same thing, but let's. Any other thing that you want besides, any other like quick tip that you're saying, okay guys, for you, those of you out there that really want to start this and give it a go, and you've done a little experimentation with time restricted eating, and now you want to go to the 2 meals, get us from 3 meals to 2 meals? I mean, just any little trick, any little thing. I know part of it's boredom, read a book, go for a run.
No, go for a walk. I mean, go for a walk is certainly, that works. Look, so much of this is, as you said, it's boredom, and COVID hasn't helped. I mean, the refrigerator is right there for most of us. And I read an alarming thing today in one of the newspapers about, kids putting on 20 pounds, like adolescent kids putting on 20 pounds during.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, a whole generation of kids is going to now have to not only deal with, the isolation, but also the fact that they put on this weight at a time in their lives when it's probably least appropriate to do that, and they haven't gotten outside and gotten exercise. I think the key here again is don't let yourself go hungry. So if you want to look at, well, here's a way you did it. You said you thought that the 8-hour window was I could eat during the 8 hours. So that's a way to start. I mean, if you think that by having lunch and then you're going to have to make it to dinner without eating, and that's going to be a sacrifice. But if let's just say you start with a 10 o'clock, brunchy type breakfast, and then you have a snack mid-afternoon, and then you have a sensible dinner, you're on your way, right? Now you've got a 14-hour window between 8 o'clock at night and 10 o'clock the next morning. That's a great start. That's 14 hours that you're not eating. And if you can just keep in your brain this mantra that all the good stuff happens to your body when you're not eating. I don't know, that Carrie and Andrew both have done multiple 7-day water fasts in the last year. And that's a bit too harsh for me, but, and my wife, Carrie, 7 days. And she was, she was starting to get what her dermatologist thinks are precancerous skin cancer thing, keratoses. And she's like, no, I'm going to deal with that. So she started doing this 7-day water fast, and she loves it. And you can't do, more than say 2 a year. You can, but then that's overdoing it, right? That's like overtraining.
Yeah, and by the way, that just for the audience out there, that's kind of something that's happening right now. I know a lot of my friends have done it, but that will be another podcast. That's for
and like you're hearing me say, I'm not ever going to do that because I like to eat too much, right? So there's a limit to how much downtime I'm going to take between eating, and I don't feel compelled to. I don't have the maladies or anything that I need to address, or I feel I need to address. And I feel pretty good about where I'm at in terms of my muscle mass. And at the end of the day, look, this is about enjoying your life. This is about me wanting every single bite of food I put in my mouth to taste awesome. So like if you talk to me about a kale salad, Kathy Smith's favorite kale salad with a little bit of lemon and some vinegar. I'm like, nah, I'm not having it. The taste does not appeal to me. Everything I eat tastes fantastic. That's why I have a food company that makes nothing but great tasting sauces, dressings, and toppings, stuff that you put on food.
My refrigerator is stocked with from the mayonnaise all the way down the line. So yes, which we've talked about in the open and the close of the show. So we'll send people, but yes, the Primal.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why I do what I do. My mission is one of hedonism more than anything. I want to enjoy my life. I want to live awesome. I want to experience every moment possible, and I don't want there to be a lot of discomfort. So I've gotten myself and 1 million of my best friends to the point where they eat 2 meals a day, and they not only do it comfortably, they're like, I can't imagine ever eating as much food as I used to eat because it makes me feel uncomfortable.
Right. Well, okay, then before I let you go, because I know it's time to wrap up, but I love the one chapter in your book, Just Get Out and Walk. I love the fact that you're and I don't want to go into the whole exercise side of this because we'll do that at another time, but the fact that just that simple act of getting out and walking is so powerful. And one that I like is just have a little fun, do a little dancing, move throughout the day. And you have another little checklist, which I honestly, Mark, I really have to say, I love that you put this in here in your book. And it was like how to break a plateau. And you had a list of like 10 to 14 things. And it's some of the things that just people don't think about. But, you want to break a plateau? Well, try a 10-minute workout, a little extra 10-minute workout that day in addition to what you do, or go for a little longer walk. Slow down your workouts, speed up your workouts. You have different, get variety, kind of like metabolic flexibility, like what you want this flexibility in how you eat and how you move and your approach to life. So that's, we've come along.
It's the metaphor. How we eat is how we do life. I mean, it's, and how we move sometimes, how we exercise is how we do life. And it's really, again, this is about empowerment too. It's about freeing up your mind to go, wow, it's okay to go long periods of time without eating if I choose to. It's okay to skip a day of working out. It's okay if I don't have time to do a full workout, I can do a micro workout, and in 5.5 minutes, I can get as much done as I might have gotten done in the gym. It's all about flexibility.
Wow, I love that. And I love the fact that here we are, look at this, look at us talking about this.
I know, it's crazy.
The star of the west side of LA is now, is the star of Miami and, Primal Kitchen and everything else. But thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And say hi to the family and Andrew and everybody else. It's always great to see you.
All right, Kathy, great to see you as well. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye. It was so much fun having Mark on the show today. He is such a good guy. Mark's philosophy is that intermittent eating should not be a struggle. It should improve your life, not make it worse. Now, on his program, you can train your body to burn fat between meals, but still feel energized and focused. And of course, that's going to make it so much easier to stick to your eating plan. My biggest takeaway of the day, though, is that you don't want to dive into it too quickly. There is some prep involved to get you to the point where you can really enjoy all of the benefits of a regimen like this without the negative side effects that we so many times associate with fasting. Pick up Mark's book, 2 Meals a Day. It's packed with really important information, strategies, and even some great recipes to help you recalibrate your system and actually enjoy being an intermittent eater. Okay, if you've enjoyed the show, don't forget there are dozens of other episodes that you can check out in the archives. So if you're wanting tips on how to transition to a more whole food, plant-based diet, or change your body weight set point, or discover if your liver is what's blocking you from losing weight, you can find all of these shows and so much more at kathysmith.com/podcast. And while you're there and you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to leave a review. For those of us who make podcasts, it's really our lifeblood. And the way that I can connect with you, each of you individually, find out what you like, find out what you don't like, what you want to listen to more of. If you've already left a review, thanks so much. I love reading them. So with that in mind, don't forget, if you want to sign up for 14 days of free workouts, all you have to do is go to kathysmith.com and join the Fit Over 40 group. Until then, here's to your health.